All right, so let's get the show going. We're going to kick things off with our first speaker, who is an FITC vet, also my friend, speaking to one of my favorite YouTubers. This is going to be awesome. Our speaker is considered an ideapreneur, but he's also a corporate ideation expert and an experienced design pro. With over 15 years of executive leadership in digital marketing and fintech, he helps companies overcome their creative challenges. And he's really into board games. I know because I've seen his board games. Seriously. So please welcome Ted or Jason Theodor, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. I'm really, really excited this morning because I get to talk to interview one of the most interesting people. So let me start with this introduction. Hello, and welcome to Deep Dive with Doctor turned podcaster, YouTuber, you name it, Ali Abdaal. The interview that delves into the mind of entrepreneur, creator, and otherwise inspiring person, uncovering his journey toward finding joy and fulfillment at work and in life. Ali, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. This is going to be so much fun.
You probably recognize that introduction.
That was
from
good.
your
I
own
like that.
podcast.
That was solid.
So I've already started off really well by interrupting you in your first sentence. You are a former medical student, doctor or ex-doctor, podcaster of Not Overthinking and Deep Dive with Ali Abdaal, a fitness trainee recently, a YouTuber with over 400 videos, almost 3 million subscribers as of today, a creative entrepreneur, Skillshare teacher, cohort creator of the popular part-time YouTuber Academy, newsletter writer, soon to be published author. Am I leaving anything out? And it might be better to start with, what aren't you?
Yeah, it sounds a lot cooler when you list it out like that. What I think internally is I'm just sort of trying to figure stuff out and trying to kind of live a happy life where I'm doing work that I enjoy. But when it's listed in an introduction, it sounds pretty cool.
Well, you do a lot. I wanted to know what's your story. So the whole doctor turned content creator, it's a great hook, it's a great soundbite, but help us fill in the gaps a little bit. Tell us the blink list or short form version of your journey.
Yeah, sure. So the short form version of the story, because they're the ones who sponsor my stuff, is so when I was in secondary school, as we call it in the UK, at the age of 11, I was a massive nerd. And so I'd spend my break times and lunch times in the computer room playing games on miniclip.com. And one day I saw some guy who had gone on the Google homepage and had right-clicked and clicked view source. And there was all this code that came up on screen. And I was like, whoa, this guy's a hacker. That's the coolest thing in the world. And I decided at that point that I wanted to learn how to code. And so from the age of 12 to about the age of 19, I had a side hustle as a freelance web designer and web developer. Every year, I tried to make my own business. Every year it failed. I tried affiliate marketing. I tried multi-level marketing. I tried paid surveys. I tried niche microblogging, all of the things that people were doing back from 2005 through to 2012 to make money online. I tried and they all failed. But then when I got into med school, I had a bit of a bad situation in that I'd been teaching people private tutoring on the side for years at this point. I'd saved up £1,000 or $1,200 to buy a MacBook Air. This was going to be my first Apple product because I'd been salivating after Apple products for years and I could never afford them. And I tried buying a MacBook Air off some dude on Craigslist, and he ended up selling me a dodgy model that didn't work and it was years old. So I kind of got scammed out of my life savings. And so at that point, I had to figure out okay, I need a way to recoup these losses, this $1,200. And so I made a list, and I still have the Evernote file from 2012 to this day. That's what am I good at? What do I enjoy? And what could I possibly make money doing? And so I combined a few things. I was okay, I'm good at making websites. I'm good at teaching, and I was good at getting into med school. So can I create a business that teaches people how to get into med school and markets it through a website? And so that formed my first business called SixthMed. And that business ultimately became super successful when I was in medical school. And 5 years later, I decided content marketing was all the craze. And therefore I decided to become a YouTuber for the sake of content marketing for my business. And so I initially started teaching people how to get into med school so that they would buy my courses, standard content marketing stuff. And then I kind of graduated to end up becoming this sort of productivity guru, writer, entrepreneur, podcaster combination. And eventually things went well enough that I was able to quit my job and do this full time.
So that's a great story. I guess I forgot to add hacker programmer to the list in the beginning, so I apologize. So you brought up some interesting things about, starting your journey. You're really interested in geeking out on productivity, things like that. When it comes to your personal brand, how do you describe what one gets from tuning into Ali Abdaal? What do you promise your viewer, listener, reader?
Yeah, honest answer is I don't really know, but my kind of rough pencil sketch of this is something along the lines of, discussing the strategies and tools and principles that can help us along our shared journey of living healthier, happier, more productive lives. Basically, what I want to do is I want to live a good life, and I'm keen on like personal development and stuff. And so I'm keen on reading about it and researching it and writing about it and speaking to people about it. And so can I try my best to live a good life and then make videos teaching that, or write books teaching that, or record podcasts, just sort of documenting and teaching that to the people that care to listen in? Haven't figured out like a really pithy way of phrasing it, but that's sort of the jumble of words I have in my head.
That's fine. I having watched you over the last couple of years, and I've subscribed to your newsletter. I've listened to some of your podcasts, but I watch more of your YouTube videos. You have a couple of amazing superpowers that I've noticed, and one of them is around speed. And you talk about when you're doing your research, you listen to podcasts at double speed and audiobooks at double speed. You watch videos at double speed. It also feels like you talk at double speed. Like your videos are so dense and so fast. And is part of that editing? Do you speed up your dialogue at all, or are you just that excited about the information that you're getting across?
Yeah, I think people have been saying for years that I speak way too fast. And this was a thing I had to actively slow down when I was, for example, doing med school interviews to get in. But since then, I've just sort of defaulted to this kind of speech. And so in editing, obviously, we get rid of all the pauses because that's what you do when you're editing. But it's just, the speed of speech. And, people often say, oh, you speak too fast. I can't understand you. But I've tried speaking slower and it's just not natural. And I feel like stuff is just more fun when I'm kind of leaning into the things that I naturally do. Like, I don't know, speaking at this pace, which to me sounds completely normal, but potentially might sound fast to other people.
It's certainly not viewable at double speed. Like your videos, because you cover so much information, and I think that's your second superpower from my perspective, is this ability to, one, appear really natural, affable, genuine, and at the same time be able to distill an incredible amount of information and present it in a way like there's no frilly bits, there's no filler content. You really just cut to the core of so you get so much density out of watching your stuff. So that's not really a question, that's just a compliment. I'll follow that up with
so it's interesting that you say that, because like internally, we're sort of with my team now, we've been doing a lot of like sort of active feedback and quality control and trying to figure out like how do we make the videos even better. And one of the big things that comes up is that I tend to actually ramble quite a lot. There's like so much of my videos that like when we look at it with a critical eye, feel like fluff. So we're like, oh, this is a 19-minute video. It could have been a 14-minute video if we'd just been a bit more concise on each of these points. So yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I guess to the viewers who are not necessarily looking at it with like a completely critical eye, it feels as if there's a lot of density of insights. So yeah, thank you for saying that.
Well, how do you deal with, I mean, obviously you look at your own work, you judge your own work, and you talk about 1% incremental improvements that build up over time. How do you deal with your self-saboteurs? How do you deal with your, I don't know, what's that called, where you're doubting yourself?
Yeah. So I've had various relationships with this sort of thing over the last like 5 years of being a YouTuber. The place I've landed at, which I think is probably been the best for my mental health, is once a video or a thing that we put out passes my internal test of I think this is pretty good. And by pretty good, in my mind, I'm thinking like, is it authentic? Is it sort of lighthearted? And is it like, is it sufficiently deep and nuanced and like not BuzzFeedy that to feel like, oh, okay, I get it. This guy, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like if it ticks those boxes internally, I will feel good about it. And then at that point, it's out of my hands, and I don't really care what happens to the video because the views and the likes and the subscribers are completely outside of my control. And so I feel as long as I just keep on working at that thing and only put out videos that I feel proud of, then hey, life is good.
So you also share a lot. You talk a lot and give away a lot of personal information. You talk about everything from your love life and dating situation to exactly how much money you're making on everything. Is there anything that you shared publicly that you regret sharing now, looking back?
Yeah, not really, actually. I think actually
That's cool.
Transparency and authenticity has been a great plus for the channel. And if we're thinking of YouTube channels as businesses, which I think people should, then it's like, what are your competitive advantages as a creator? And I think one of mine is that I'm just more open to being transparent and raw and vulnerable and authentic than a lot of other people are. And I haven't really seen any negative effects of it. I think it's kind of cool to be transparent about like love and money. And those are things that people really care about.
Yeah, it's true. And it's inspiring. It's inspiring to hear and to see someone talking about it. And it gives people the courage, I think, to do the same, which just creates better content out there in the world. Speaking of that, so the way that you interact with people and on your podcast, is there a particular question that you love to ask people when you're talking to them about creativity, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so usually the question that I find myself leading with is just like, how did we get here? Because normally the people I speak to are either entrepreneurs or creators or authors who have like a life and a lifestyle that is a little bit unusual. It's not like they are, I don't know, I guess if I think of what the bulk of my friends are doing, working as doctors or working as management consultants in London, they've ventured out, they've quit the corporate job, they've left medicine to do this thing of like writing cookbooks. That's a bit weird. Right. So I tend to start with like, right, so we're sitting here, you've got like, I don't know, 3 million subscribers, you've got these best-selling cookbooks, you've got like 1 million followers on Instagram. Like, how the hell did we get here? And it's just interesting tracking the story from the ground up. So that's probably my favorite question. And another thing that I'm very interested in is is how people deal with the question of like purpose and meaning beyond the point of money. Because when you're young and when you're starting out, it's very there's a very clear box you need to tick of like make enough money to survive or make enough money to quit the full-time job and stick it to the man and all that kind of stuff. But once you're beyond that point, then it's easy to continue chasing the money thing. And I always find it very interesting, like the people who have made enough money so as not to need to work anymore, what are they doing? Like they've ticked that box. So why is it that they're still working, and what's the purpose and meaning and fulfillment they get from that? And therefore, what are the things that I can learn? And therefore my audience can learn about what actually brings fulfillment beyond, hey, I need enough money to survive.
So speaking of that, you've gone from, being a DIY YouTuber. Like you said, you've tried a bunch of different things that failed. You've hit on some successes. You had some incredibly popular videos on YouTube, specifically, I think, around how to study. I think that's when I first found you. How to get through med school. How have things changed now that you are running a business, now that you have a team, now that you're not working completely alone anymore, you're working with your own group? How has that changed your content and your perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. So now that we've got like we have this team of 18 people now. We have a studio, pay salaries, we give people pensions and paid time off and all of that stuff around like running a legit business. But it's weird because like the output fundamentally is still the same. It's YouTube videos. And so the challenge is in maintaining a level of like relatability and authenticity while actually having a large amount of people kind of behind me. And when I was starting out, and some people would criticize me for this, and as is the case with all big YouTubers, when you're starting out, it's all raw enthusiasm. It's like, yeah, I'm making videos in my bedroom and life is good, and I'm editing and doing my own editing and I'm doing all the things, and I'm just one of you guys. I'm just like, well, whatever. But the real paradox of being like a YouTuber that is leaning on relatability is that as soon as you get any amount of traction, you immediately become a lot less relatable, because now it's like, oh shit, every time I make a video, I'm making $10,000 in sponsorship fees, which is more than my friends are making in 3 months of working kind of like 80-hour weeks as doctors. Like, what the hell? That just sort of takes you to a path that is so unrelatable for the vast majority of people. And so the challenge is in kind of retaining that element of like, hey, I'm just in my bedroom. Like, we've got a studio right now. It's like super fancy, but like, we've tried to literally recreate the vibes of my living room from when I was living in my flat in Cambridge. And we literally have a fake light there that's shining light onto a slatted board to create the illusion of like beams of sun. Because we're like, we just want to really lean into making this seem as homely as possible. So that's kind of the big challenge.
So it's like fake genuineness, although, well, it's genuine fakeness, or
something like that. It's like straddling that line between having a production team behind me while also almost like having the vibe of, hey, I'm just a little YouTuber and I've stumbled into this and like life is good, kind of thing.
So you talk to a lot of people that have done similar things to yourself in terms of success. Is there this question actually comes from Leia, but what is a common theme that you've noticed among successful content creators that doesn't get talked about very often, and perhaps something that relates to yourself as well?
I think one thing I've noticed a lot is that all of the content creators I know who are very successful spend absolutely freaking ages doing their thing. Like we had a guest workshop with Mr. Who's the Boss, who's this like 10 million plus subscriber tech YouTuber in the UK, who spends like somewhere between 60 and 100 hours every week scripting his videos. Spends like a whole day filming a single video because they do like 20 takes for every single line. And everything is like choreographed and planned out. And you look at the videos and you think it feels very natural. It's like a 15-minute video, but it's actually like 120 hours of work that went into that 15-minute video. Similarly, we had a guest workshop in our YouTuber Academy from Matt Diavella, who a lot of people might know. And he spends sort of like 2-3 whole days like scripting his videos word for word, and then spends like 2 days shooting them and then 2 days editing them, and ends up working 6 days a week. And I think in the realm of content creators, I think one thing that actually doesn't get talked about, I think maybe this was talked about before in the sort of Gary Vee's heyday of like, you got to hustle, you got to like put in the work. But then it seemed like the sort of the tides of the world shifted towards, hey, it's all about like balance, and it's all about like having a good work-life balance and things like that. But there's no creator I know who's like, quote, successful in terms of the metrics, who actually has a good work-life balance. And the thing that seems to drive them, for some of them, it seems to be genuine passion for the craft. And for a bunch of others, including me to an extent, it's a sense of fear, a sense of like, oh crap, I've somehow stumbled onto this golden goose and I can't kill this golden goose. So I need to keep on the treadmill. I need to keep on uploading videos to YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So this like kind of dark side of it that isn't often talked about.
I think a lot of people believe that you just get on YouTube, you publish a video, and then you're famous. But it's that, what's the saying? It's like, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. The amount of work that you put into your all of the content you create is evident. I wanted to ask you about obsession. So what's the latest topic? What's the latest thing that you've been obsessing over and chasing? Maybe it's fitness, maybe it's, you tell me.
It's actually like longevity. So like living as long as and as healthy as possible. So I read the book Lifespan by David Sinclair, found his podcast. There's the Huberman Lab podcast. There's all this stuff which is like straddles the world of like medicine and like kind of biology and chemistry and like lifestyle design and personal development into this thing of what are the things that we can do right now that, in terms of lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, drugs, supplements, etc., that have a decent evidence base behind them to help us live potentially longer. Because one of the really cool things is that, we've kind of assumed it's just an inevitability of human life that we age and die. And we, in medicine, we tackle all these diseases like cancer and diabetes and heart disease and Alzheimer's. But really the underlying process underlying all of them is aging. And there's so little research in aging compared to in cancer. So like, why not kind of try and turn the clock back, target it at its source? And the research on this is like super exciting these days. So I'm really trying to dive headfirst into the topic and explore it as much as possible.
That sounds very much related to something that you've studied a lot about in the past, medicine, I suppose. medicine and health. I had another, I don't know if we have any questions from the audience yet, but I have quite a few more here. One, I guess, is sort of related to the pandemic, but a question about how the pandemic helped, hindered, or changed the way that you do your work, especially since you just started building out a team.
Yeah. So when I'd worked as a doctor for 2 years in the UK's National Health Service, and I'd always intended, like at that point, to take a break and spend a year traveling the world. So in August of 2020, I decided I was going to spend a year traveling the world. I had this whole plan for like skiing in Japan and then going to Singapore and then Australia and New Zealand. And then pandemic happened. And so I ended up working in the pandemic for a few months as a doctor. But then when I left, at that point, it was like, well, I can't travel the world. So I guess I'm stuck at home. And it was while I was stuck at home that I was like, all right, cool. Let's double down on the YouTube channel. Let's create the new courses. Let's do whatever we can, which it was me and 2 other people in the team at the time. Let's just do whatever we can to, make this business thrive. And then a few months into the pandemic, as things slowly started opening up, I discovered like WeWork and the power of like just having a co-working space to go to each day. And so me and Angus, one of my team members, would go to that space and we would kind of figure out YouTube ideas and course ideas and stuff. And there was something about in-person, working with people in person, that I just hadn't had before that point in the creative sphere. And so when it came to figuring out what I actually want to do and how I want to spend my time, I realized that for me, the energy that I get from hanging out with people in person is worth a lot, even if that comes at the cost of expensive studio space and expensive salaries and like living in London where everything is more expensive. I could have gone down the digital nomad, living from my laptop, traveling the world route. But I sort of decided post-pandemic that like, actually, to me, it feels really cool and fun right now to actually build a team in person here in London. And that sort of, yeah, I think it's still super fun, having been doing it for like a year now. And I want to continue doing it for as long as it continues to be fun.
That's amazing. And the studio looks beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
So the question I have for you and your team, and when it comes to figuring out the kind of content that you want to put out and create, I know you're following your obsessions and things that you're interested in, but how do you avoid the Martha Stewart syndrome, which is essentially where you really start recycling old ideas, or you want to attract new people that haven't seen your content before, and you still have great content that exists. How do you repurpose it without feeling like you're retreading over old material?
Yeah, honestly, that's a real struggle. We haven't really figured it out. One theory that I've heard from a few coaches is that like you can just redo content. Like no one really cares. On my channel, the average viewer will watch around two or three videos. And so really, of the 450 videos in the back catalog, the vast majority of people have not seen 99% of my stuff. And so me repeating stuff feels like repetition to me and feels like repetition to the core fans who have seen everything, but it's actually not repetition to 99% of people who are going to watch that video. So part of it is me being more okay with that and being content to just remake a video every 6 months. We don't do it every 6 months, more like every 2 years, but like I want to be more okay with repeating content like that. The other tricky thing is yeah, absolutely. I feel like I kind of feel like I've already said all the things that need to be said about like a lot of the things like studying and productivity. And I'm kind of dabbling in personal development, sort of branching out into health and fitness and stuff. But this is the problem with being a creator in an industry that relies to an extent on like continually pushing out new stuff, is that you need to find new things to say. And if you feel like you've said the final word on a thing, like how to study, it's not that hard. Like there's a few principles that you got to keep in mind. Then you sort of just say the same stuff, but like in different ways. And then there is the thing of like people take 7 repeated things at a message to really internalize it. So I'm trying to be okay with it, but honestly, it's something that we're struggling with, that I think about every day. Like, how do I make sure my content doesn't become stale? Plus, how do I build a business that will sort of succeed despite my content becoming stale over time? Like, even if the channel doesn't really grow, and even if we stagnate, and even if we decline in terms of views because the stuff is whatever, it's just repetition and rehashing and whatever, how do we still have a business that's successful? And how do I still kind of have the freedom to learn and teach things on my own terms without having to worry too much about the numbers?
Where do you think the future of content creation is going? Like over the next 5 years, you know, you're doing a bunch of different things. You're not just doing YouTube videos, but where do you see content creation going?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely a drive towards higher and higher production value and more effort that's being put into the videos. It seems like the videos doing well on YouTube these days are not so much the, hey guys, let me sit in front of my bed to the camera and have a bit of a chat with you. It's more of the very clearly scripted hook, followed by a very interesting storyline, followed by a 20-minute video that has like multiple storylines going involved. And there's so much effort that goes into that. So right now it feels like the more effort you put into the content, the more likely it is to do well. But at the same time, I think there is, and I think we go through sort of peaks and troughs of this where, you know, there's even more scope then for long tail creators to build that very core audience of people that genuinely like them for who they are and like them for their thoughts. So I think we're moving towards a world where, yes, the mainstream will be dominated by people like Mr. Beast, who spend ridiculous amounts of time and effort on making really sick videos.
And money, yeah.
And money, yeah. But then there's this long tail of creators who maybe have a few hundred subscribers on Substack. To be honest, this is nothing new. Kevin Kelly predicted it way back in like 2006 or whenever he wrote his 1,000 True Fans thing. But I feel like that, like a lot of creators I know are making, you know, making decent incomes online from a relatively small audience through like intelligent ways of monetizing it. So,
and thanks for that answer and for mentioning the 1,000 True Fans. For those that don't know, can you elaborate on that a tiny bit?
Yeah, so this is an essay that Kevin Kelly wrote like way back in the early 2000s, I think it was. The idea that because of the power of the internet, it's actually relatively straightforward to make a living online. All you need is 1,000 true fans, and a true fan being defined as someone who will pay you roughly $100 a year. Maybe they'll buy the limited edition, signature edition of your album, or they'll go and see you in a live show if you're a musician or whatever. And as long as you get 1,000 of those people, you don't need an audience of millions or tens of millions to make a living. You just need 1,000 people that'll pay you $100 a year. And then, right, you know, there's the extension of that concept, which is actually to take it one step further. All you need is 100 people to pay you $1,000 per year, and you've got the same thing. So how do you find like a really niche community of people who are more than willing to pay $1,000 a year for the incredible value that you offer? And now you only need 100 people, and it's relatively straightforward to find 100 people rather than 100 million people.
Absolutely. And that kind of ties into the cohort and teaching that you've been doing, right? The courses, they're a higher value, more one-on-one. Do you want to explain a little bit about how the cohorts that you're building around the YouTuber Academy work?
Yeah, so I think back, you know, a few years ago, the whole like online courses were all the craze and have been for about 10 years now, where you can learn at your own pace, etc. But I think for a lot of skills, like starting a YouTube channel, for example, it's not really the knowledge that holds people back. It's the accountability, it's the community, it's like actually doing it. You know, there's that phrase of like, if more knowledge was what we needed, we'd all be millionaires with six-pack abs. Like, it's really the execution that's the hard part rather than learning the knowledge. And so initially I was like, oh, we should do a course teaching people how to be YouTubers, because I've been doing it for the last 4 years. I had a few systems and stuff that helped me become a part-time YouTuber, i.e. continue to grow on YouTube while only putting in 10 or 20 hours of work a week in terms of effort. These days, more like 5 hours a week in terms of effort. But then speaking to a few friends, Tiago Forte and David Perel, who run their own cohort-based courses, made me realize that actually, if you do it as a cohort, A, it's more fun because then you get this sort of live community interaction. B, you make loads more money because the margins in cohort-based courses are really good. And C, it's actually a better experience for the audience and for the students because now they're more likely to actually do the thing rather than just absorb the information and then never actually take action in the first place. So I think cohorts are pretty cool. It's just a lot of work to run a cohort. So I don't really want to do it again for another course. But we've got our YouTuber Academy. It does really well. It's still quite fun. And we're in the midst of a cohort right now.
Amazing. There's a question from the audience. Johnny Ansari asks, how do you prevent burnout? Because you're doing so many different things. And now you've just started working out. So maybe that ties in with dealing with burnout, but you tell me.
Yeah, so I don't think I've ever experienced burnout, but whenever I'm on the like I've figured out like the warning sign, and I think the warning sign is that feeling of looking at stuff on my calendar and thinking, oh God. And whenever I have that feeling, then I'm like, all right, cool. This is a useful feeling to know about. Let me take a step back and think about like why I'm actually doing this thing. And so literally like in the last couple of weeks, I had this feeling about like some of our YouTube videos and podcasts and stuff. And so we actually completely scrapped a whole project. We were going to start a whole new YouTube channel teaching people how to be creators. We just decided, what if we just didn't do this? What if we just scrapped it? Cool, that's fine. And then entertained the idea. Thinking about the idea of scrapping this big project made me feel a sense of relief, like, oh, my soul feels lighter. And I recognized that as a feeling of like, okay, if we'd continued down this route, sure, maybe we'd have made more money, but like, you know, it would have come at the risk of potentially burning out. So I think it's really about identifying those things. And then I do a lot of journaling. I do a lot of sitting down with a pen and paper or an Apple Notes document and being like, all right, cool. Let's rethink why I'm doing the YouTube channel. Every 2 months or so, I have a phase of like, why am I doing this YouTube channel again? Oh, okay, it's because of ABC. And then like, okay, cool, let's figure out the strategy. And it sort of feels like a reset whenever I feel like, this is not as energizing as it once used to be.
What about the book? You're someone that's known for creating videos and audio content, and they're very modern ways of communicating, and they're very popular. What is it about writing a book? What is it about creating a book that's important to you?
Yeah, so with the book, there's like selfish reasons, and then there's like other reasons. So the selfish reasons for the book are like, you know, it's a really good brand builder. It's a really good lead magnet for stuff. When you write a book, it gives you a level of credibility and prestige that you don't really get from being a YouTuber, because now you're a published author with a traditional publisher and maybe a best-selling book that lets you go to cool conferences and give keynote speeches and charge $100,000 for a 1 hour long talk kind of thing. All of that seems to get unlocked when you publish a book. So there's like that sort of selfish side of things of like, if I'm thinking of my brand as having longevity, all of the people that I admire in this space, people like Tim Ferriss, those people sort of helped their longevity by virtue of having books. So book is cool from that perspective. I think book is also cool from just it's just like a cool thing to do. I've been a consumer of like pop psychology, self-help books for over a decade now. And generally when I'm a consumer of something, I like to think, could I become a creator of this thing as well? And just the idea of writing a book is just kind of cool. So it's a fun process. It's kind of cool. And hopefully it'll help people. But then there's also this whole like raft of selfish motives for doing it as well.
Do you have a title yet?
We do. I think.
A working title?
I'm gonna keep it under wraps right now, because we don't want anyone to go out and just like register all the domain names and all that stuff that now comes as a result of revealing a title. But we're still working on it.
So you mentioned some of your favorites. Tim Ferriss, the four-day work week was probably one of the first books that you read of his. Yeah. You mentioned Gary Vee. You often mention James Clear from Atomic Habits and Getting Things Done with David Allen. Is there anyone else that, when it comes to inspiration, that I haven't mentioned?
Grab this books. Austin Kleon is a big one. This book, Show Your Work and Keep Going. And he's got another one, Steal Like an Artist, which is over here somewhere, but I can't find it. But this book,
those are great.
Show Your Work, it's kind of mirrored, but it says Show Your Work. This was the book that when I read it in 2015, 2016, this was the book that made me make my own website. And that was the thing that led to me actually publishing articles on the internet, which led to me then making the YouTube channel. So I owe a lot to Austin Kleon.
That's amazing. Does he know that? Have you talked to him?
He does. Yeah, I interviewed him I actually sent him a thank you email, and then I said, P.S. would love to have you on my podcast. And he was like, sure, let's go on the podcast. So we've spoken a couple of times, and I interviewed him. And then there's also Derek Sivers, who I discovered through the Tim Ferriss show, whose books I read, whose blog posts I devoured, who really helped. His just philosophy on life is really cool. And now Derek has actually become a friend of mine, and we talk on the phone every, a couple of times a year. So that's been super nice. Like actually kind of being able to meet and become friends with these people that I've admired on the internet.
What does Derek Sivers create? What's his?
Yeah, so his story is interesting. So he used to run a company called CD Baby, which allowed musicians to monetize their music before online sales were like a thing back in the day. And then he sold it for like 22 million, but then he gave all that money away to like a charitable trust. And since then he's been sort of writing books and blog posts and stuff about his like philosophy of life, which is a very gentle philosophy of life. It's very much like, don't do growth at all costs. Don't worry about the numbers. Just like have fun and help people and be profitable. And if you're doing those things, then you're doing good. And there's a quote that he has in one of his books, which is probably my favorite quote of all time, which goes along the lines of, Never forget why you're really doing what you're doing. Are you helping people? Are you happy? Are they happy? Are you profitable? Isn't that enough? And I think that's really nice because as a creator, entrepreneur and stuff, all of us, the desire for more and more and more money, more fame, more prestige, more accolades, more subscribers, more views, all of that kind of stuff. It's easy to fall into that trap and to forget that, well, actually the whole point of all this stuff is for us to be happy and to be fulfilled. So let's actually take a step back and think about, is my pursuit of fame and money and stuff actually leading me on the path to happiness, meaning, and fulfillment? Like I think it might do. Yeah. And then everyone has to answer that question for themselves.
That's amazing. That's a great philosophy. And thinking about one of your other philosophies that I really have appreciated is your concept of luck. Louis Pasteur once said that chance favors the prepared mind, which is one of my favorite quotes. And you've said similar things about being very honest about your luck and some unfair advantages. How do you prepare for chance?
Yeah, so my sort of theory on luck, and it's not really my theory. I'm sure I've gotten this from about, like, I've been reading books like this for years and years and years. So whenever I say something, it's really just a repackaging of what someone else has already said. To be honest, as is the case with all books in this kind of genre, but hey, that's fine. Yeah. But like with luck, there's like different types of luck. There's sheer dumb luck, the sort of luck you get by stumbling upon a lottery ticket in the middle of the street, and that happens to be a winner. But then there's also the sort of luck you get from, for example, one analogy I like is, let's say you're born in this little village and you're not really connected to anyone else, and you don't really venture outside of the village, and the only people you talk to are people in the village. It is very unlikely that lucky things will happen to you, right? Unless maybe a car comes by the village and someone visits the village, and that is the person you end up marrying or starting a business with. But if you take the same person in the same village and then they spend their weekends visiting neighboring villages and like talking to loads of people and talking to everyone that they meet, then that person has the much more of a chance for like lucky things to happen to them, because they've just sort of broadened out their surface area for luck to happen to them. And so yes, if they stumble upon someone who becomes a business partner or joins a company, an early stage startup, and becomes a billionaire or whatever, yes, they've been lucky, but they've also allowed themselves to be lucky as a result of it. So I think there's that kind of luck. And then there's also sort of like return on luck. I think this is a concept from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. Like companies that are great rather than just good, the way that he does his analysis is the companies that have capitalized and their return on lucky events has been good. Now, how do you capitalize on a lucky event? I think that comes from that Pasteur quote about being prepared. Often, like for me, the way I think about capitalizing on lucky events is having bandwidth. So if I'm, for example, running flat out and with no free time to do anything, it's very hard to pursue opportunities, but also having a general attitude towards kind of experimentation and saying yes to stuff. And I think that really helped me in my earlier days when I was not yet as established in the creator field, just sort of saying yes to opportunities that came my way, and just being, that idea of move fast and break things. Whoever came up with that, where's Steve Jobs? What is it? Facebook? Who knows? But just being like sort of having that bias towards action. And the more you have a bias towards action, the more likely you are for lucky things to happen to you, but also for you to then be able to capitalize on those lucky breaks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's a question from the audience. Actually, it's from Sean. Sean Pucknell has a question. It wouldn't be FITC without asking about crypto or NFTs. Some influencers, I don't know if you hate or love that term, but like Gary Vaynerchuk, for instance, Gary V, he's all over crypto. He's created a massive community on Discord. Do you think about playing in that space? Do you think about it at all? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, we did think about it. We had plans for an NFT project linked to a community, kind of copying the Gary V model. Had a few friends who were super into crypto who were really pushing it. And then after thinking about it, we kind of realized that I don't think it's the time. Like, it sort of felt like one thing that you have to be mindful of as a business expands is staying within your core focus. And our core focus is actually just creating decent content that hopefully helps people. And exploring crypto, exploring NFTs and stuff, that's like a community play. It's a community meets crypto play, which is not really the thing that we're actually good at. We'd be starting completely from scratch here. We'd be trying to figure out the playbook as we go along. And, at this stage of our business, we were like, you know what, let's actually focus on the things that matter. And maybe it means we're missing out on like a $10 million, gold rush with NFTs. but that's fine. Like, we're actually doing the thing that matters to us, helping people, creating content that helps people live their best lives. And maybe we'll explore the crypto NFT stuff further down the line once it's a little bit more established.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Do you have any personal investments? I think you've talked a little bit about your own portfolio. You have a little bit of Bitcoin and maybe something else.
Yeah, I probably have, I think, like 200K in crypto in total through Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a bunch of random ass altcoins. Don't really have any NFTs. I think I have one NFT or two. Yeah, it's not really a space that I've paid loads of attention to. It's been on the to-do list for a while that, understand more about crypto and that kind of stuff. So, a space to watch.
So we're getting down to the last 5 minutes or so. If anyone has any additional questions to ask, please do. I'll make sure to forward them on here.
Oh, Jason, I've got a question for you, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah.
So you in your in the intro, Leah said that you help companies like overcome creative blocks, creative challenges. Yeah. How do you do that? Because I feel like we have a creative challenge in terms of continuing to come up with decent ideas for decent videos. So like, what's the process that we should follow internally to
my goodness.
kind of help get better at that?
All in like 1 minute. Well, thank you for putting me totally on the spot. But so I do these things called idea boosters, but it's essentially, it comes from the core concept that creativity is the act of connecting things in exceptional ways. And you capitalize on action, connection, and exception. And when you're in a situation where you are having trouble, say, what should we do? How could we make this idea better? There's a bunch of very specific exercises that can be done. And one of them is completely lifted from Edward de Bono, who basically coined the term lateral thinking, where you inject a random word into the problem that you're trying to solve. So you look around the room and you inject the word staircase. And then you ask the room, what are 3 things about a staircase? Let's just describe it. Okay, well, it allows you to get from one level to another level. It is rectangular and it is wooden. And then you look at your problem and you say, okay, how do we either literally or metaphorically take this idea of moving from one level to another level? How does that apply to the problem here? How does wood apply to the problem? Well, wood is a flexible organic material. So you basically take and you break the default that your brain would normally go from one place to another place. Your brain has grooves in it, right? It goes from A to B. When you think of a topic, you tend to think along the same lines. And this random word exercise was just one of many. It really allows you to snap out of that and to go laterally into a place that you couldn't have gotten to otherwise. So hopefully that sort of explains it.
Nice. That's a good idea. We're going to start doing that from today.
Yeah, that's a good one. And again, thanks for asking. Is there any question that you wish someone had asked you? Something that that nobody's really broached. I'm making you do my work now.
Yeah, to be honest, not really. Like I don't know. Anytime I get invited to do a talk or something, I'm always a bit surprised because like I feel like the things that I have to offer perspective on are not like that interesting. I just steal ideas from all of the books that I read, and so it's always it's always kind of surprising. So I guess the way I think of it is like if someone's asking a question, then cool, I'll do my best to come up with an answer based on all of the stuff that I read. But I don't really have any questions that I wish people would ask me. I don't know. That feels too much like a guru. I like to think of myself as more of a guide than a guru. That hey, we're all on the same journey. We're all just trying to figure shit out as we go along. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to curse. But
I think you are.
I think yeah. Let me share the tips I've learned along the way, and if it's relevant, then maybe it'll be helpful. That's kind of how I approach content in general, I think.
Yeah, I think, like I said before, your superpower is that distillation of information, and it is greatly appreciated. I don't think I have any other questions, and we've got about
Perfect.
2 more minutes. We got about 2 more minutes left. Is there anything that you want to end off on, that you want to plug?
What are some
that you
other
want to talk about?
what are some other exercises? So you've got the kind of looking at a staircase and random stuff around the room. How else, like, what other tricks can we apply to our creative process to make it more good?
Well, there's one called 10 Ideas in 10 Minutes. That one is basically about rapid fire creating. You set a deadline, a false deadline, which is putting you under pressure, and you just come up with ideas. Another one is problem reversal, where you literally try to come up with the absolute worst idea. How would we destroy this idea? How would we ruin our company? How would we make sure that no one ever buys our book again? And by getting all those bad ideas out, it gives people permission to have bad ideas, which actually enhances the whole creative process. And your brain automatically tries to solve these problems anyway. So as soon as you start thinking about the negative or the worst case scenario, you immediately start to fix it, and it's just sort of a backdoor into solving a problem.
Nice. Okay, that's been super helpful. Thank you. So number one, look around the room and figure out what sort of creative element that you can sort of force yourself to think about in terms of applying that to your thing. Number two, 10 ideas in 10 minutes. So I guess for us, that's like title ideas, but also hooks. How do we start this video? How do we structure this video? Let's just spam ideas onto the page in 10 minutes to kind of start with quantity rather than quality. And then the quality will emerge from quantity. And I guess number three, like, what would be a really bad way of doing this video? What's the worst possible way imaginable of doing this video? And sort of have permission to sort of free flow those ideas there.
Quantity, quality, and uniqueness, the 3 Qs. That's what I go by.
Oh, nice. That's cool. I like it.
Well, I think we're out of time, and it was amazing to talk to you. You're an inspiration, and I wish you all the success in your fitness and your longevity and your book and everything else that you get yourself involved in.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jason. It's been really nice, and I look forward to meeting in person at some point.
You bet.